good morning. This is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant morning, and once again welcome to the channel. And I hope that I have cooked up something interesting today. Well, maybe not cooked up, I actually read it online, but this is what I'm calling EVindicated. This is a senior executive from Stellantis has come out and basically said the quiet part out loud that people seriously just don't want to buy EVs. And Stellantis this is a massive company. This is not just some little corporation. They own some of the biggest motor companies in the world, like Vauxhall, like Opel, like Dodge, Chrysler, and many, many more. I'm going to post up the whole the page of how many companies they actually have their fingers into. So this is not a small voice from the automotive industry. And this is what myself and many others have been saying all along, is that the whole EV mandate is completely unworkable, that people are not going to go for it. There is all kinds of issues around range anxiety, and you know, when you drive around, there's only so many people live in cities. There's an awful lot of people live in rural areas. They may not have the same kind of access to charging that you do in the city. Maybe hydro is more expensive when you get out into rural areas because there are less people using the system. But you know, why would you, at the age, my age, you know, in my early 70s, why would I even dream of spending $60,000 or $70,000 on an electric vehicle when I live in a country that has a serious winter issue? Who knows if it's going to be able to get you there, and what happens if you get stuck in a snowstorm? There are so many issues. The infrastructure is no small issue as well. The recharging infrastructure is not in place, and so none of this is going to work, and there's no wonder that the public are not buying into, you know, they would rather go out and spend 20 or 30,000 on a decent used gas or diesel car and know that they're going to get maybe 10 years, 15 years of life out of that vehicle still, even though it's used. You know, I've got a diesel Volkswagen there, and I rolled over 300,000. I'm hitting about 320,000 kilometers on the clock, and it's just broke in. You know, so yes, why would I want to sell that vehicle? Why would I want to switch over to something that is undependable and is expensive, and I know down the road I've got a massive expense to incur in replacing that battery? Okay, so it's going to pop over this article. I'm going to read that to you, and we'll take a look, and I'll come back and do a quick wrap-up. Okie dokie, here we go. From Newsbreak, Exec blasts EV hype and claims almost nobody actually wants electric cars. Electric vehicles were supposed to be the car industry's unstoppable future. Instead, a growing chorus of executives is now arguing that the market has been badly misread and that most drivers are not ready to plug in, no matter how loudly governments and investors cheer. The backlash is sharpening as sales growth cools, incentives fade, and some of the biggest names in auto start counting the cost of the electric bet. At the centre of the storm is a blunt claim from a senior figure at Vauxhall's parent company that nobody really wants EVs, a line that has ricocheted through boardrooms and show floors. I see that remark less as a literal statement about the demand and more as a verdict on how the industry has tried to force a revolution faster than customers, infrastructure and policy could keep up. Exactly, that's what we've all been saying. The Vauxhall broadside and a new mood of EV realism. The most provocative shot came from an executive linked to Vauxhall, who argued that nobody really wants EVs and blamed electric models for sapping car companies' profits. The remark, reported in the Daily Telegraph Saturday edition, captured a frustration that has been building as manufacturers pour billions into battery platforms while watching buyers hesitate. By framing the issue in such stark terms, the executive was not denying that some consumers love their Teslas or high-end Ioniqs, but suggesting that the mass market still sees electric cars as a compromise rather than an upgrade. The same report underscored how the sentiment is spreading across Europe, where companies juggling tight margins and strict emissions rules are now questioning the pace of transition. The fact that the quote appeared in the Daily Telegraph Saturday section with the traditionally car-friendly readership underlines how mainstream the skepticism has become. When a brand as established as Vauxhall is associated with such a sweeping dismissal, it signals that the era of uncritical EV boosterism is over. Former insiders, hype policy, and an EV winter. That Vauxhall-linked critique echoes what some retired industry heavyweights have been saying for months. In one televised discussion, former executives complained that the electric push happened too soon, too fast, warning that we're seeing the cascading effect of a failed initiative as inventories build and margins shrink. One of those voices argued that the problem with the whole EV movement is that there was a colossal amount of hype behind it, driven by what he called true believers who assumed a rapid, universal switch to battery power that simply wasn't going to happen. A view captured in former auto executives who now feel vindicated by the slowdown. Those warnings are colliding with a policy environment that is no longer as aggressively supportive as it once was. In Europe, the EU has softened its planned ban on combustion vehicle sales, a clear sign that regulators are adjusting to slow adoption and political pushback. Analysts now talk openly about an EV winter as sales growth cools and companies like Ford, General Motors and startups such as Slate Auto confront more cautious buyers, a trend one report summed up with the phrase colossal hype meeting colder reality. Profits policy and the Detroit mood shift. The financial strain behind these complaints is increasingly visible on balance sheets. General Motors has now taken over $7 billion in charges as it scales back EV production, a stark acknowledgement that its early electric rollout is not delivering returns once promised. That kind of write-down reinforces the Vauxhall-linked complaint that EVs are sapping car companies' profits, especially when paired with the capital costs of new factories and battery plants that are not yet running at full tilt. For shareholders who were sold on EVs as a growth engine, the numbers are sobering. Policy shifts in the United States are adding another headwind. Under Trump, Congress cut tax incentives that has saved buyers up to $7,500 on an EV purchase, removing a key nudge that helped offset higher sticker prices. At the same time, the administration has weakened fuel economy rules that once pushed automakers towards electrification. The result was on display in Detroit, where at the North American International Auto Show, the spotlight has dimmed for EVs, even as the rest of the globe, especially China, electrifies at pace. Premium EV fatigue and a marketing mistake. Even at the top end of the market, where early adopters once lined up for every new launch, the shine is fading. Once detailed analysis noted the premium EV demand seemed to be cooling in exactly the places the industry expected to carry the next leg of growth, such as high-priced, high-margin models. That slowdown matters because luxury buyers were supposed to subsidize the technology curve for everyone else, soaking up early costs while mass market prices fell. Instead, inventories of six-figure electric SUVs and sedans are rising, and discounts are creeping in. Part of the problem, as Winterhoff of Lucid argues, is that the industry has been selling virtue instead of desirability. He says car makers often frame EVs as the responsible choice, lecturing buyers about emissions rather than highlighting what makes the cars exciting or convenient. In a separate interview, the Lucid CEO put it more bluntly, saying buyers want space and power, not the eco-lecture, and comparing his own Air sedan to luxury benchmarks like the Range Rover SV to stress that electric cars must first be great cars. Slowing sales, shifting incentives, and the long game. Across the broader market, the data now supports what executives are feeling anecdotally. Analysts describe a phase of EV realism, noting that the industry was once euphoric about electric growth, but that consumer demand no longer matches the most optimistic forecasts. One assessment framed it as how automakers react in 2026 will be telling, as companies like GM, Ford, Hyundai and Tesla adjust production plans and pricing. Another report warned that while EV policy is deteriorating, sales growth is slowing at the same time, creating a feedback loop that makes it harder to justify aggressive new investments. In the United States, the retreat of federal support has been particularly sharp. The EV market has taken a dive since federal tax credits were phased out last September, removing another layer of price support just as interest rates climbed. Yet, but General Motors chairman and CEO Mary Barra still insists there is an eventual all-electric future in the endgame, a stance she reiterated when Barra said GM still believes EVs will eventually take off as charging becomes easier and prices come down. That long-term conviction sits awkwardly beside the short-term pullback, but it reflects a broader industry belief that today's slowdown is a painful correction, not the end of the electric story. Well, good luck with that. So I, for one, and I hope many of my listeners are feeling very EVindicated that the narrative is now coming undone. We said that it would. You know, they called us crackpots and crazy, and oh, yeah, we were, anti-progress and anti-climate change. All the names, of course, we're getting used to that now. So, that little issue has come to an end. But, we are seeing the unraveling of a narrative that was completely unworkable. Now, all of these companies have sunk a whole ton of money into the whole EV notion. And I'm not saying that there isn't a place for EVs. Like, if you live in a city, if you've got easy charging, and you're only doing like really sort of short distance stuff, and it's a second vehicle, because down here, where you're in hurricane territory, the first thing that happens in an emergency is the power goes off. And what happens if you just plugged your vehicle in and you can't go nowhere? So, like I said, there is a place for them, but it will never replace, not yet, it will never replace the internal combustion engine, gas and diesel. You are not going to be shipping anything really, with any efficiency, with an electric-driven truck on these highways. So no, this needs to be rethunk. And the problem is, it's not the problem that people have come up with this idea. It's great that we have these new ideas and so on and so forth. It's to suddenly invest everything that you have in this one idea, to force people to go in one particular direction. And I can't believe that there hasn't been, people, advisors, who went out there and took polls. Or maybe, they just, with people who answered the polls, this was wishful thinking. Oh, yeah, I'd go out there and get an electric vehicle. And, of course, as soon as the incentives disappeared, the rebates and so on and so forth, people, again, stopped going out and buying them. So I'm not saying this idea is completely dead. I think that people like Tesla will survive because all he makes is electric vehicles. That has been Elon Musk's main focus, and so he really doesn't. And even his sales are down a little bit, but you would expect after a period of time, once the novelty wears off, you would get into realizing exactly what your sales are going to be. But he isn't going to be hurt. His company will still manufacture electric vehicles, and he will still sell them in the market, and people will still buy them because Tesla is basically, I don't care what imports you have, Tesla is the name. Yeah, everyone knows what a Tesla car is. So that's not going to happen, but by and large, this has been a fool's errand, and we are just not ready to make that transition. And the people at the top who are making these policy decisions should have known that this would have been the case. But, this really actually tells you what a bubble they live in. They think that, they come up with an idea, well, people are going to buy, they all want to buy it, we'll force them to buy it. Well, good luck with that. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on the whole EV thing, and I'm feeling pretty chuffed right now that we all called it. You should pat yourself on the back, give yourself a big hug. We called this before the experts, the people who are paid to advise. Well, there you go. Okay, so if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant morning, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.